Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hey, this is Aaron. I just wanted to do a quick PSA just to let you know that our podcast is actually looking for a new intro song. We're looking for about an original 30-second brass band composition. If you happen to be chosen, we'll invite you to be featured as a guest on a bonus episode of the podcast, as well as you will get credit at the end of every podcast. So, if you're a composer or you're interested in maybe trying to compose for this, we have bands to record it. We just need the composition. So if you're interested, please email submissions to Amy at amyschumacherbliss@gmail, AMYSCHUMAKERBLISS@gmail. And if you need that information, you can also find it on our website, newworldbrass.com. But yeah, we thought it would just be great to feature some brass band music in the beginning of our podcast and as the exit outro. But as you can imagine, when I was putting this together initially, there's not a lot of just like brass band music on free-to-use podcast music websites. So hopefully we can find a great submission for you guys. I'm looking forward to all of your submissions. And anyway, let's get on with the show.
When I was judging the youth section a few years ago, I gotta tell you, I was I don't know how many months pregnant.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I didn't drink anything.
Right.
Because when you're pregnant and you have to go,
I know.
You gotta go.
That's right. Exactly. So, but we're a little less barbaric than we used to be. We give them breaks now.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
meal breaks and bathroom breaks are,
Absolutely.
the show does not have to go on
Exactly.
without those. That's really funny. So, how early on did you get involved with NABA, Ron?
I think the year was that, I think in terms of academic years as being a professor, I think it was the year 87, 88. Paul Drosty and I had met the previous year, or 2 years ago. My Salvation Army Student Fellowship Brass Band went to Columbus. And Paul and Jack Evans came, Jack, who was directing the former director of the Ohio State Band, came to the concert. And Paul and I met and we decided, hey, why don't we have a joint concert, BBC and SASF. And that started the God and Country series back then. At that same time, Paul said, why don't you come to NABA, check it out, and I would like you to consider being on the board. So I think the concert, NABA that year was in Columbus, up in one of the suburbs. And I went and attended and looked at it. And Paul invited me to join the board, be a member of that, and I was happy to do it. By the next year, NABA was in Hammond, New Jersey. And I became assistant to Mike Swaffer, who at that time was the controller. So I was learning the ropes, okay, to help run the contest. The following year, Mike turned the whole thing over to me and asked me to be controller. So my first efforts in NABA were as a member of the board and then as controller. I soon was asked to serve in officer position, whereas the controller is an appointed position by the president back then. The officer positions were appointed by the president. So I was appointed vice president first, and I did that for 2 sessions. And then I became president, did that for two years terms. Meanwhile, I had also been controller. When I became president, I felt it was necessary to turn over the controlling to other people. And I gradually had other people trained, like Tim Holton, okay, who did a great job. And Beth, I forget her last name, who was also in the US military at the time. Then eventually Tom Scheibner and others began, our guy, John DeSalm, took over for a while. So, but I did that. And then I would come back when we needed 2 controllers. I remember, I'm just giving you examples. Once we were in Wheeling and John and I had to divide the locations. So I controlled in one spot and John in another. So I did that. But the other thing I did for NABA for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I edited the bridge. Now I did a lot of reviewing for the bridge, music and and CDs. And of course, we did a reading band back then, and we had a lot of music sent into NABA, which we would then review in the bridge. But I also edited the bridge for a while, but it became, let's just say, I was doing a little too much. So eventually, I just became a member of the board, and eventually, once I was no longer serving as controller, I began to serve from time to time as a judge, and it averaged about every other year. I don't know how many I've done, 8 or 10 contests. I don't know. I think the last one I judged was the year Peter Graham's music was featured. Okay, we were up in Indiana. I think that may have been the last time. But yeah, I've kept in touch with NABA. Now, in terms of NABA, one of the things I always felt was important, and Tony, you and I have talked about this, my own bands were not competitive, but they were members of NABA. So Lexington Brass Band paid its annual dues. But every year I would ask my board, do you want to do the contest? Well, they wanted to do good programs, Tony. They didn't want to spend all that time on a contest piece. So we didn't do that. But we were members of NABA, and we hosted NABA one year at UK.
I was there for that.
Yeah, we gave 2 different gala concerts through the years, once in Louisville, once in Cincinnati. I mean, we did galas, and my SASF brass would play for comments only. I remember we went to Washington, did a weekend when the contest was at Fort Myers. The SASF brass went and did a concert, did a NABA, a typical half-hour program on the Friday night. We didn't go for points. We went for comments. So I always felt that we should encourage the bands that aren't necessarily competitive to also be part of NABA. I mean, you have your own professional band not too far from you, another former Lexington guy, Brian. Okay. Yeah. I think that band should be a NABA member, you see.
Yeah.
And
they actually are. They are.
Oh, good. Well, see, I'm glad. See, I told Brian they should be an NABA member.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be. Some of our bands only want to be in NABA if they're doing the contest. Otherwise, they don't want to bother. I think NABA is much more about community and membership of sharing ideas. I wish we did more joint programs, you see. And we're doing more area programs when we can get bands together. But I always felt that NABA should be not just those guys who want to be competing. I think one of the good things with Huntsville will be, and I'm glad you're moving it around, you'll do Huntsville for a number of years, is you'll get bands down south that will come in. See, the same way when you were up north, you had bands coming in who could afford it. Because we have to realize, unlike Great Britain, our distances are huge. And our costs are, relatively speaking, astronomical, you see, for bands to compete. Yeah. So, although I think NABA has done a wonderful job of drawing in a fine number of bands. And let me just say this, this is a personal, and I am delighted that you have a band doing a gala again with Brighouse.
Yeah.
By the way, they played very well at the Nationals. They placed in the top 4.
Yeah.
Okay. And some people thought they might win. But David King can't travel.
Yeah, he's stuck in Australia right now.
He can't come over from Australia.
He's relegated to making Cornet CDs again.
Well, yeah, and I've listened
very good
to a couple of the cuts on Resurrection. Superb. I mean, you talk about vibrato, though. That's David's shtick.
Yeah.
If you listen to some of the styles, David can turn it on and off. If he's doing more of a romantic piece, my gosh, the vibrato is there. If he's doing a more contemporary piece, he's more like a trumpet player.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, I'm personally pleased that there's a gala because that's something where we can all come to and learn from. Not that it's not bad to hear all the top bands play their test pieces.
Yeah.
There's something in that as well. But to have a model group like a Brig House, or years ago we've had other ones do that separate from the competitive element, I think brings us together. Okay,
Yeah.
and I think I commend you for bringing Brig House over. Are they going to also contest, or are they just going to play?
No, they're not competing. They're just doing the gala.
Well, and I think that's wise, because that would have been. I mean, I think Fountain City and a couple of other bands were giving them a run for the money, but again, it could be unfair. Any of those top 10, they wanted to have an elite division. They haven't done it yet in Great Britain. Those top bands, they really are technically superior. They're good. But what I have sensed in NABA the last couple of years, our bands are getting more and more proficient and more musical, and we have nothing to apologize for. Our top bands are incredible, you see, and on any given day, and it's beginning to happen, they'll travel over to Great Britain and they'll do well. They'll place in the top categories. I'll never forget one year I was judging the All England, and I had no idea that Fountain City was on a short tour. Okay, now I judged and found out they came in third or something like that.
Yeah.
But we chose the top player of the day, and it happened to be our euphonium player from Fountain City. Well, we had no idea who that band was, and it was who I mean,
Lee Harrelson.
Lee. It was Lee.
Yeah.
So Lee got the Soloist of the Day award. It was kind of a hard piece to choose a soloist from. It was Bruce Broughton's Masters of Space and Time. Let's just say there weren't many exposed solos in that, but the one that was exposed, Lee just played it so well. So, but that kind of thing. But I think our bands are holding their own, and I think on any given day they have a great chance. Very, very, very well. So, but I am delighted that Brig House is doing a gala. I think that will be a wonderful feeling of us all together. And then you give the awards. It's not any one band, you see, sticking out. I mean, there'll be obviously a winner, you see, but there's Brig House, one of the best.
Well, when Brig House is there, we'll all be the winners because we'll get to hear them play.
Well, exactly.
Right.
And we will learn from that. See, that's one of the good things with the gala is that you learned repertoire, you learned program, whether good programming or bad programming, right? And you heard good new music. So I think that's an occasion you did. I mean, remember, Tony, when we did NABA at UK, we ended with the Lexington Philharmonic joining us.
I remember that.
I mean, to show that union of brass bands and orchestras. So, there's so much we can do, and we we just have to think sometimes out of the box.
Yeah, I think the last time that an actual British band played at NABA was Grimethorpe way back in Arkansas.
That's right.
That's a long time, and I think it's one of the things that NABA really can help push is that while we do have access to what those British bands sound like and play like more because of YouTube and live streams, hearing them live is a very different experience than recording.
There's nothing like hearing them live, because you can get it on a CD. You want to hear that dynamic level in a Black Dyke or a Brig House or a Foden's. You can be gobsmacked by their dynamic range, but you won't really experience that except live. And then you'll say, my gosh, how soft they play, or how full. And yet they never distort. The best bands never overplay the whole. Some of the bands overplay the whole, but the best bands don't.
That's the experience we had when we were promoting the Corey band when they came over here in 2016.
Right.
And I was going to different schools and talking to the bands, the school bands and saying, I would play a video of them doing Enter the Galaxies, and
Right.
the kids are blown away by that. And I says, look, I said, you guys know me. I'm not known for being, for lying to you guys.
Right.
Until you sit in the room when they're making this happen live, you
Yeah.
really can't understand how incredible these groups are. And
That's right.
people took me up to that. We filled up an 1,800 seat hall.
Yeah.
And it true to form, when you hear the Corey band play, Mars, the first thing they played was Mars.
What a band. I mean, what a band.
It just blew everybody out of their seats.
Absolutely. So I commend you. I think it's fantastic. And I'm hoping that I get over to Huntsville. It's a lot closer for me, Tony.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were in Fort Wayne essentially for 6 years. And I was on the board when, the intention wasn't to stay there for 6 years. The intention was to be there for 3 years. And then,
right.
But, it just, the proposals that came in, Fort Wayne was just the better proposal.
Right.
And this one, Huntsville was the right place to do, because while we, staying in Fort Wayne, it did give those Midwest bands the opportunity. And we did go from, significantly increase the number of bands that were participating in the contest by being there.
Right.
And
I got to Fort Wayne several times, and I thought it worked out well as a venue. And but I'm glad it's moving around. There were two, when I was president, there were two thoughts, Tony. Let's all meet in Columbus every year. Let's go to Jerusalem. You know what I mean?
Right.
Kind of a thing. The other one was we moved around. Okay. I mean, the reason we hosted at UK, by the way, Tony, was at the last minute, the infant Fountain City, it wasn't called Fountain City yet, it was called Kansas City. They bailed.
Yeah.
They bailed 9 months. They felt like they couldn't do it.
Wow.
So Skip and I went to the university music department, said, and of course to the Singletary Center, can we take this on? But we'll need your help. You see. But back then it was, let's move it around. And but I maintained more central United States if possible. On the other hand, find a good hub bands can fly into. You see.
Right.
I mean, Louisville was okay as a good location. I liked it. Unfortunately, there was some miscommunication between our former president, Doug Yo, and the gals up at the University of Indiana Southeast. There was, shall we say, some tension there. But in the long run, I think moving around a bit has helped NABA. The only thing we face is we still have difficulty bringing in our far west bands because of the cost. And if we can have regional festivals, so much the better.
Yeah.
Our problem is building enough financial incentive to help them.
Yeah.
You see, hold those regional festivals.
Yeah.
So, we do have some nice bands out there from Colorado on, and they'll have a tendency to gather out there more than coming all the way, say, to a Huntsville or a Columbus or a Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it could be they can raise the money every other year, you know, to do a contest.
Yeah.
So
it's funny how, even though the passage of time, the conversations are literally the same.
That's right.
Yeah. We have the exact same conversation. Do we move it around, or do we keep it in one place?
That's right. I mean, our board, and as you know, Tony, your board changes every year. And you'll have a board that has a majority opinion. 2 years later, that's going to change. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's going to rethink things, you see. And maybe that's the strength of a volunteer organization, you see?
Yeah.
Is the fact that you have a lot of input from thinking people. And sometimes we need to think differently. We need to think out of the box about what we do. And I know you've been doing that, and that's great, because NABA must, I mean, the operative word was evolves.
Yeah, it evolves.
It evolves, it changes. The NABA of the year 2000, okay, when we is not the NABA of 2022, 22 years later. It's just going to be different. And
Yeah.
that's good. The band should be better. We should do a better job of running the contest. You see, every aspect of it should be improved, should be refined. You know,
Yeah.
it should be a well-oiled machine. Not that things go perfectly every time, but you know, we can get better at it. So we can get better
Yeah.
at it.
Well, we're very fortunate to have some really, you know, which I feel has always been the case, you know, is there's really good people on the board.
Yeah,
You know, I can only imagine, you know, with how easy it is for us to communicate these days, how difficult it must have been to manage the NABA board in the 90s.
well, yeah, that's why we
Yeah.
did. That's why I did newsletters and stuff, Tony, and because remember, email was in its infancy.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you know, that kind of thing. So we did the bridge, and then the quarterly newsletters was the way we connected people. But
Yeah.
you know, one of the good things about NABA, and I know you have to work on this all the time, is the difference between community and self-interest. Obviously, bands are in doing bands because they want to be the best they can. They want to win the trophy or the banner, and that's important. On the other hand, and that's self-interest, and that's going to drive a lot of what you do. We used to have board members, Tony, when we would do the contest piece choices at the board level, and you just knew some of those guys on the board wanted to choose certain test pieces because it played to their strength.
Right. Is their
See,
band.
rather than overall. See, and that was self-interest. On the other hand, the majority of the board was looking for the best music to challenge the widest group
Right.
within that particular category. And I hope we can never lose that in NABA, that sense of, you know, the balance has to be towards community
Yeah.
and less on self-interest.
Yeah. And we definitely have that right now. You know, one of the things I talked about at our last board meeting is to make sure that when we talk about things, you remember that while you do use your experiences with your band to gain your knowledge about this, remember that we are advocates for the activity, not for your band.
That's right. That's right.
And everybody, I think everybody takes that seriously. And I think that's a big reason why, you know, with the board is now thinking more, back to the future type, where we're, you know, thinking about developing regionals and access to newer bands and moving
Right.
the contest and developing, developing the organization for more brass bands than just the competing brass bands, and really
Agreed.
bringing those people together. So it's
Yeah.
kind of going back to the foundations, and it's really tough to do that because of the volunteer nature of the organization.
That's right.
One of my goals is to really, before I'm too wrapped up in doing this, is hoping that we can get enough of a financial backing to hire an executive director.
Exactly.
What we really need is a professional front to this, because it's just too much work for a volunteer.
I agree, Tony. Yeah.
You know?
And ultimately, that's what's going to be needed. You know, I mean, you know, way back in '96, I'm not sure if you were playing in Lex Brass yet, Tony, but
I was there. Yeah.
yeah, we did regionals. We brought a couple of bands from
Yeah.
Columbus, Cincinnati. You know, we brought those bands in, and it wasn't competitive. It was people sharing for one
Yeah.
another. And then we did mass bands. at
Yeah.
the end, you
Yeah.
know?
I remember that.
So that can be a very positive thing. Now, it takes good leaders and cooperation, but it really can build. You know, Joe Johnson did a nice thing here before COVID. He did a Southeast brass band thing where the bands played for each other. Now,
Right.
they weren't competing against one another, but there were certain prizes. And I was the guy at the desk, you know, and it's best program, best whatever.
Right.
And, you know, and it was very, very positive. Now, those bands that came there, I bet almost all of them are going to be at Huntsville.
Yeah.
None of them, but Georgia Brass Band, had ever been at an ABBA
Yeah.
event. And
Yeah,
we have
that's
all
great.
these bands, hopefully,
Great.
you know, they've caught the image there, and now NABA's in their backyard.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, brass band of Huntsville, it's right, heaven's
Right
sakes,
there. Yeah.
it's right there. You know, and the group up in Chattanooga, you've got Georgia Brass, you've got Rome Brass Band Festival Brass. You got all
Yeah.
these bands. Hopefully they'll
Yeah.
give it a shot. You see?
Yeah. But not only that, but some of the Florida bands that, you know, found it
Absolutely.
difficult to get up to the Midwest, Texas bands.
Yeah, I think of Sunshine. I don't know if they're still operating.
They
I
are.
mean, they were a regular and they haven't been coming for a while. You've got bands in Florida. Yeah, you're going to find a nice, you'll have different bands coming in, but that's the way it is when you change location, and it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So, you know, we're in a good place. We're just hoping that we haven't had a contest in 2 years.
I know.
So we're trying to stay positive and hope that it,
Absolutely.
it still goes forward.
Now, Tony, you're still doing the solo and ensemble, right?
Yeah.
That's going to go on the Friday. Yeah, I started that, back when there were things happening at NABA. Bands would come in and rehearse or whatever. We had a lot of people come to NABA, and this is important for you guys. They would come to NABA because they loved brass banding, but their whole band couldn't come, but they could bring a sextet or a couple of soloists. So it started in 98 when we hosted at UK, Tony. We started the solo ensemble contest. And it takes organization. What's that?
That was the first year of it?
That's correct.
Wow. Interesting. My tuba quartet won the ensemble competition.
That's right. You guys were great. Get out Diane's book, Herrick's, her little 25-year thing.
Yeah.
You can read about that.
Yeah, I've got it right. I've got it somewhere.
Yeah, we started I believe the first year was 98 when we started at UK. And then every year, and there were two things we wanted to do there. People coming to NABA that weren't necessarily in a competing band could feel they had a role. Secondly, even though many bands were rehearsing all over the town, whatever, we had a reading band. And guys came in and out. We had a big reading band, it was, 80, 90 people. But sometimes, okay, Cincinnati Brass Band is rehearsing from 9 to 9:40. Well, some of those guys would come to the reading band for 45 minutes and then they'd leave. Not some of the guys didn't come, but you had influx in and out. And we would read a lot of good music. And what we did was we used the adjudicators as the conductors. You see, and I would share the scores with them. And then, because the adjudicators wouldn't be seen on the Saturday or contest, of course, we moved to Friday too, but the reading band, they would meet these guys. Who is Bram Gay? You see, who is Peter Graham? Who is, Bram Gregson, whatever. These guys would conduct, you see. And by the way, we would read a piece. I would hold on to the music. Of course, that's why Lexington got some good music. And I would say, does anybody want this? You see, if not, it's going in the Lexpress library. So, we built a pretty good library as a result. But I share a lot of it to the other bands too, if they want it. And of course, one of the things you can work on, Tony and Amy, is kind of a lend library. I think we already do it, but bands loaning to one another scores and parts and that kind of thing. Because that's how bands start up. Phil Smith is gradually building a library up at the University of Georgia. They had a little bit ahead of time, but some of us have just been sending Phil stuff. And, sometimes he uses it, sometimes he doesn't. That's fine. He can use it when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
So, building a library, of course, we do it with scores already. You guys publish a list of scores that people can share and use, not just for contests, but you can borrow it because you're not sure about such and such a piece. See?
Yeah.
So
Well, the solo and ensemble contest is something, the thinking now is, and this is kind of one of the reasons we wanted to bring the gala back, is because so many people have to invest so much to come to the NABA weekend.
right,
The more bang for the buck that you can get, you can do
Exactly.
solo ensemble, you can get the gala concert, you get to compete, you get to hear the other bands.
right.
One of the coolest things about the NABA contest weekend now is that there is a very good sense of community amongst brass banders, because banders will go and play their gig and then they'll go and listen to other bands, which is something that
good.
doesn't
Sometimes they
happen.
want to go to their beer party, Tony.
Yeah, and they'll do that too. And Huntsville has many establishments for that. It's a big selling point that Huntsville has.
Good.
Yep. But if you went to the finals in Royal Albert Hall, you won't see many bandsmen in there listening to other bands.
No, and by the way, they're crying in their beer. Literally, I remember when I first attended some of the contests in England, even before I judge, I would go out, in the interval, and a band would, Lexington, remember in 2000, we did the judges interval program and everything. You'd go out, and once the results were made, there would be 1,000 people out swarming outside drinking the beer. And everybody was pissed because they didn't win. Well, and only one band won, you see? And everybody was saying the judges are idiots and I could have been a contender. That kind of thing. And later when I was a judge there, same thing. Guys coming up to you and say, what could you be thinking? And I said, well, what band are you? You have to tell me a number. I don't know who you are.
Right.
I don't see you.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the US, they're still drinking. They're still in the crowd of people drinking. But
Sure.
here it's more like we're like, hey, I haven't seen you for a year. How are the kids?
Right.
How are you doing?
And your band did so well. I really liked the way you played whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Because in Great Britain, there's no love lost.
Yeah.
Remember, the British Open has been going since the 1850s.
Yeah.
So, that's quite the long-standing tradition. And
Yeah.
the Nationals, since the turn of the century. So,
Yeah.
Really, that's a long time. And the bands, they're close together anyway. If you get up in Yorkshire,
Right.
Blackjack and Brighouse ain't that far away from each other.
Right.
See, they're kind of bumping into each other on the highway. You know what I mean? Whereas we're scattered all, and we want that camaraderie and that community and that feeling of bonding and helping one another.
Mhm.
And boy, the more we can do that, the better off we are.
Yeah.
As
And
an
I think
organization.
and that's one of the good things about our championships is that there's such a good community feeling about that. These bands, some bands have to fly there, some bands have to travel hours on a bus. I know the last time that Triangle went to Fort Wayne, we took 4 bands there and invested over $40,000.
I know.
In that trip.
I believe it.
So people put a lot into it. They need to get a lot out of it.
Right.
So it's good that we keep, that we're never going to lose that. When we talk about things like, well, what are we going to do to make sure that we keep that community spirit,
Right.
Involved in that contest? And that's, that's the driving force for it.
Well,
Let me
Tony-
I'm going to change the subject on a couple of things here,
Sure.
which it has been my pleasure to be involved in. And you're aware of this, Tony, because of your own youth band. 2 things. The fact that we're able to have brass bands go to Midwest from time to time. Lexington has done
two
it.
this upcoming year.
I
Let's do this
know.
here. Yeah.
2 bands. We've got
We got
We've got-
Athena and Brass Band of Battle Creek. Are both
brass band of
there.
Battle Creek. And it hasn't been every year. I mean, when you apply, remember, we are a community band. And if they choose a really good wind band from Japan, forget about it. We ain't going to have a brass band there because there's only like one category.
Right.
But we don't get it every year. So, but we've had different bands, brass band of Columbus, Lexington Brass, Chicago Brass Band,
Mountain City's done it.
blah, blah, blah. And the other, and the more we can encourage our bands to apply, it's hard to get in, but we have to keep applying. And Tony, now I'm not involved. I mean, I was the artistic director for years on the committee, the Great American Brass Band Festival.
Right.
I kept trying to get, because I can't turn it into a British Brass Band Festival because it's not, but we could bring in a good band and a youth band. Your band came and did so well.
Yeah.
Your youth band. So, and we've been able to do that from time to time. I'm not quite sure what's happening there, Tony. We had an arrangement, and I think the guy who directs Kentucky Music Educators,
John Strobe.
John still is artistic director, and he tries to connect with NABA. Our thing was, who won NABA? Okay, offer that to them first, the first couple of spots in the championship. If they don't take it, go to the first division, because those bands are great too, see? So I'm not so sure how much that's happening. Or if you've got a good youth band. A couple of years, we had your band, we had Helen's group from Fountain City. We had, Eric's groups from Columbus would come.
Columbus, yeah.
And the more we can do that, and I don't just mean, doesn't have to be Great American, it's other brass band festivals, okay?
Yeah.
Now, Gettysburg is bringing in some good bands.
Yeah.
There's this vintage brass band thing up in Minnesota. It's more like turn of the century bands, but they're beginning to think outside the box too. So NABA should reach out to those festivals and be as aggressive as you can to say, hey, what about us?
Yeah.
See?
Well, you got me in touch with John Strobe and the contest, or the Great American, this past summer. It was
Right.
All four of the bands that were there were NABA bands.
Right.
And the contest, or the event, really happened because of the NABA bands. Because
because if the NABA bands
it was
hadn't
weird
been there,
year.
they wouldn't have been able to hold it. So
Right.
I hope John keeps. I try not to put my oar in, Tony. I've been there, done that, and I think it's time for other people. But to the degree that we can interact with the overall festival community, starting with those summer brass band events,
Yeah.
and then branch out, that's good too, because it certainly doesn't hurt us. So
Yeah. And we also are going to be working with some of the existing contests like Dublin and the
Right.
Gateway, and actually the US Open as well.
is
And
US
giving
Open
them-
is US Open going to happen or not?
Yeah. They have 5 bands signed up for it, and they're going to do it anyways, even with 5.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard one way or the other. So
Yeah, but
Okay.
we're gonna we've budgeted money from NABA to give support to these festivals.
Right. That's important. That's good.
And we actually have a 5-year plan, to add more. So the next year we're gonna look to do a Canadian event and a West Coast event.
Yeah.
Whether we start one or whether we partner up with one that already exists and go back out East Coast. So in 2 years, we're going to have a regional event within an 8-hour drive of every brass
Right.
band in North America.
That's awesome.
That's good. I don't know if you saw that one of our Toronto bands that won,
Weston?
they did a cute thing just this year.
They always do a cute thing.
Well, what they did was they took Peter Graham, Ron Wakesnorris, and I saying comments on their performance. I think their winning performance of Endeavor, and our comments would come across the screen while the band was playing. Now, of course, they couldn't see that, but it was really kind of cute because Peter, and I were on the same page, saying it slightly different, but there would be our comments. But I hope Weston, because that's one of our best bands up there. I hope some of those Canadian bands can come back. But I'm glad you're thinking of a Canadian festival if we can't get them to come all the way down to Huntsville. Okay.
Yeah. We and these are we want them to be whatever the local sponsoring group decides if they want to do a festival, if they want to do a competition,
Right.
because we're also working on consolidating adjudication,
Right.
and revamping the adjudication as well. So, we'll have the same pool of judges, the same adjudication philosophy and approach at
Sure.
any of the regionals that do that, and they can hybrid. If you don't want a contest and you just want to go and play, you'll get the feedback from the judges of your band, but you don't have to play for scores. So it can be whatever it can be. Just as we're just really wanting to get access to every brass band to go and connect with other brass bands at some point. It's going to take a while to get this all going. It's going to take years. But the board's focus is on building the community of brass bands. It's the only way we're really going to survive and grow.
Right. And let me just say, we're getting towards the end of this. To the degree that you and the board can have a master plan long term, all the better, because you are temporary, Tony, in that sense. You know what I'm saying? I was president 4 years. You'll probably be president 4 years. Anita was 4, but you need a master plan, strategic planning, so that when you hand it over to the next person, that person follows through. Okay.
Yeah.
And you have overlap. Otherwise, you're reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's highly critical. That's where Tom Palmatier can be an interesting conversation, because when I had Tom as my VP, before he took on president, I gave Tom the task of us generating a master plan.
Yeah.
And it held true until Doug did his shtick for a while, okay, and kind of changed that a little bit. So I know you'll be thinking about that, but strategic planning over the long term. And you're right, if you can get an executive director, okay, that can come in and, be the helpmate of the board, you see, the functionary who puts the bullets in the gun, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Because that's what the president is right now. I'm doing an executive director.
Of course you are.
And I'm not getting paid like an executive director.
No, and that's the way it really was. For a while there, our dear friend Bert did a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Okay. But he had his business, but he got a pittance. And then we had our other guy from West Virginia for a while. That's not when I was president, but later. He did some good stuff, but ultimately you need a dispassionate, disinterested person who has administrative skill, who understands brass band, but has no hidden agenda. He's there for everybody.
Yeah.
Simple.
Exactly. Well, I think you were right. We probably did get to the end of this session, and so we're gonna wrap this up. I think we'll probably try to set another one up with you at some point.
Glad to do it whenever you think possible. Okay.
Yeah, to talk about some more things and delve into some other topics that because we didn't really even get into the forming of a band, which is something that you've done.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's another whole conversation.
Right.
I feel like there have been times in this episode that I've been putting myself on mute and typing notes like check into this, find this book.
Well, you're very kind, Amy. It's been great. I will look forward to the final. By the way, is that my book behind you there on the shelf?
This is my brass band shelf.
That blue one, is that one mine?
Yes, it is. Here it is.
That's volume 2.
Yep.
Ta-da.
I don't know where the other one. I have the other one, but I don't know where it is. It's not on this shelf.
That's the one with all the technical analysis, but there it is. So
yeah, I've got one of them too.
That was a good find.
Yeah, my bookcase is empty back there, but usually I have some brass band books that are usually on that too. But right now, I have some construction done in the room here, so
sure.
All out. But you would see one of them. You see a Ron Holz book right there.
All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. This was great. I'm glad to be involved, and whenever you find I can be of help to NABA, you just let me know.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Holz. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys, Amy, and so good, Tony, to see you guys. Bless.